Welcome to Sagenheim. In the previous part of the Thidrekssaga, we witnessed how Samson killed King Brunstein, obtained a second city, and finally became king himself. Let's see what awaits us in today's episode. So here now, from the Olden Days. It is told that the king had a son with his wife Hildisvit. He was named Erminrek. When he grew up, he was both handsome and strong. The king loved his son. King Samson increased his kingdom in many ways. He traveled widely and brought the western lands and many other places under his control. Then King Samson had a second son who was called Thetmar, after his uncle. When this boy grew up, he was large and strong and brave like his father. He was hardy, wise, and a good warrior, and like his father, in disposition. King Samson had now become an old man. His son Erminrek was full grown, and Thetmar was 12 years old. It happened one day that King Samson sat in his high seat, and his son Erminrek stood in front of him. The king spoke to Erminrek. "I do not wish that you serve me or any other man. I will now give you the title of king over 12 of the strongest cities in Spain, which I conquered with my own sword. Gain more power yourself, because I did not receive this kingdom as a gift or as the inheritance of some woman, and I do not lack power." When his younger son Thetmar heard that, he went before his father and said, "Now you have given your son a kingdom and much power. Up to this day I have been with the sons of the knights, and you have divided the honor unequally between us until now. And yet you might set this aright if you will give me some power or title, even though you have made him such a great man." The king heard his speech and did not answer. He looked at him angrily. He thought the speech insolent. He made no answer and went to his room. King Samson was sitting in his high seat in the best of halls, and the hall was occupied by the chieftains and hung with velvet. It was provided with fine dishes, and there was new wine, red and white, and his tableware was all of refined gold or silver. Before him stood 3 serving boys with great cups of red gold, and everything was set with precious stones. It was midday, and the sun shone on all the glass windows and carried light into the entire hall, and there were all kinds of games one could imagine. King Samson raised his hand from the table and spoke. "Now I have occupied this high seat 20 years, and all of my men have had peace, and I have not increased my kingdom. Much has changed during this time. In this hall there is much beauty and magnificence of glorious chieftains and good heroes. And here their equipment is left behind, and all kinds of games are brought forth. And much has changed. My hair and beard are no longer as black as a raven, but rather as white as a dove. My arms were red and black, but now they are white. Your swords were then reddened with blood and notched by weapons. Now the red of rust can be seen, and your byrnies are rusty and the shields have split apart. Where are your horses that were both strong and swift and could leap through burning fire if they were told to do so? Now every knight wants to ride out, and it will not seem right to him unless he is so gentle that when he runs as hard as he can, a feather would not be shaken loose from his helmet if one were laying there. What else does my white hair mean? Than that, even though I sit here in my high seat and never go out of Salerni, it shall fare with me as with all the others in the world. And when I am dead, then your reputation is also dead, all because of your easy life. But great deeds and battles are always just as new from the past as in the present, and I cannot await the day here in Salerni. My men shall now carry the message into all my kingdom, to the kings and dukes, and all of the men of the land. And in every place everyone shall do nothing for 3 months, save ride horses and prepare saddles, prepare shields and make byrnies, spears and swords and sharpened swords. And when this time has passed, then shall all chieftains come to me with all their men. Then King Samson had a letter prepared, and sent 6 well-accoutred knights out with it. And in this letter it said that the King Samson sends out to Earl Elsung, the powerful, magnificent, and long-bearded. You have long delayed showing us honor by paying tribute or speaking friendly words. Now you shall send us as tribute your daughter, who will be a concubine to my younger son, and along with her you shall send 60 noble maidens with fine clothing and 60 well-equipped knights. Each knight shall have 2 horses and 1 squire. And you shall also send me 60 hawks, well trained, and 60 hunting dogs. And on the best of the dogs you shall put a collar of gold, and a leash made from your beard. Then you will know that a certain man in this world is more powerful than you. If you do not wish to carry this out, prepare yourself well for 3 months, along with all your fortresses and all your men. The knights went their way, until they came to the city called Bern, to Earl Elsung the Old. They arrived when the Earl was at table. They carried the letter with the seal of King Samson forward, and laid it on the table before the Earl. He took the letter and read it himself. When he had finished, his face was as red as blood, and he spoke in great wrath to his men. The great King Samson has sent us word that I should send him tribute. Now he thinks we have come into our old age, so that we would endure that which we would not endure when we were younger. He thinks we would serve in shame and have his enmity. Before his demands are met, every castle will be broken, and many knights will be made headless, and I shall die here before I suffer this disgrace. He had these knights taken, and had the one who had brought the letter hanged high before the castle. 4 others he had beheaded, and he had the right hand cut off the 6th, and sent him thus home. Then he had all his fortifications prepared with stone walls, and moats dug around them. He had catapults set up before the gates to every castle, and he prepared his knights thoroughly. Now there was much deliberation in the land about how the few of them might defend it against King Samson. The knight returned to King Samson, and told him of his journey, and of the disgraceful treatment they had received from Earl Elsung. When the king had heard that, he acted as if he had heard nothing, and did not answer, and made no motion to show whether it seemed good or ill to him. When 3 months had passed, an overwhelming army assembled. Then King Samson rode out of his city, and with him 3 kings, many dukes, and in all 15,000 knights and countless other men. Then they rode into the land of Earl Elsung. And when they had been riding in that country for 2 days, Earl Elsung came to meet them with 10,000 knights and a great army that had come from far across the land, both from the mountains in the north, and from Swava and Hungary in the east. When they met, there was a great battle and slaughter, and many men fell on each side. Then King Samson rode up with his sons, Erminrek and the young Thetmar. King Samson struck both men and horses, and felled one on top of the other, on both sides of his horse, and he rode far into the armies of his enemies. And his byrnie and his horse were covered with blood. Now he took a sword, and the hilt rang out so loudly that almost all the army could hear it. King Samson called out, "If I were to ride alone into this army, I would still be able to kill, with one hand, any of Earl Elsung's men if need be." And his voice was so terrible that all were now frightened. When Earl Elsung saw what damage King Samson was doing to his men, and that it could not be helped, he called out loudly, "Let your men attack hard. We will be able to take the victory and kill them, and finally your armies will fare better. This thick-necked dragon, who has now long attacked your men, shall soon fall dead to the earth, or I shall die, and this battle will come to an end." Then Earl Elsung urged his horse on with spurs, and rode alone to meet King Samson bravely. The Earl struck at his shield from above, and split it from top to handle. With a second blow to his shoulder, he split open his byrnie, and struck him a great wound. Just as quickly, King Samson struck the Earl in the neck, so that it took off his head. King Samson took up the Earl's head, and asked if Elsung's men recognized the head, and bade them cease fighting, if this head had belonged to Earl Elsung. The battle came to an end, because the Earl had fallen, and then all of Elsung's men gave themselves over to the power of King Samson and his sons. After this, King Samson rode with all his men to Bern, and no one was bold enough to dare defend a city or castle in Elsungland. When the king arrived in Bern, all the city gates were open, and the burghers came out to meet him with all kinds of entertainment, and showed him all of the money chests that had belonged to Earl Elsung, and they gave everything into his power. King Samson had a great feast given in Bern, and at this festival he gave Attila, the daughter of Earl Elsung, to his son Thetmar, and gave him the title of king along with Bern and all that kingdom that had belonged to Earl Elsung. He gave the city called Fritilia, which the Varingja called Vizela, to his son called Aki, and he gave him the title of duke. His maternal line was not distinguished. This Aki was called the protector of the Amelungs, and he was a great and powerful chieftain. King Samson and King Erminrek moved their army south to Rome, and during this journey King Samson died. King Erminrek, his son, took over everything that had belonged to his father and traveled to Rome, and in a great battle took the best part of Rome, and he gained many other powerful cities in Pool. He now owned the greatest part of the territory, from the Greek Sea north to the mountains and a great part of the Greek islands, and he became the greatest and richest of all kings. He was popular and peaceable during the later part of his life. And thus, the fourth part of the Thidrekssaga is coming to an end. In the next part, we will hear about Didrik and Hildebrand for the first time. Hear about the famous sword Nagelring and its blacksmith, the dwarf Alfric. And what all of this has to do with a secret cave, you'll hear in the next episode. So thanks for tuning in, and see you again next time, back here at Sagenheim.